These days, it can be hard to trust the media. What's true, what's fake, and who is behind the message? I'm a freelance journalist and videographer who has spent years studying the media. Now I'm taking a look at what local, regional, and national news stories mean to us here in North Central Washington. I'm Dominick Bonny, and this is Common Sense. Hello and welcome to Common Sense. I'm Dominick Bonny, and in this episode, we're going to be covering an idea that is taking the nation by storm. Like a mixture of the Red Scare of the Cold War era and the Satanic Panic of the 1970s and 80s, it's equal parts dangerous and absurd. It's the manufactured, hysterically emotional reaction to, quote, critical race theory. And it's just the latest in a long line of ginned up issues designed to elicit an emotional response from Americans and shut down logical conversation. Even though it's a framework that is implemented mainly in higher education, it's an issue that has taken the media by storm and caused real headaches for K-8 educational systems throughout the country. Take, for instance, this unrest at the Loudoun County, Virginia School Board meeting this week, where angry people showed up to protest the implementation of CRT, or so they were told. These photos were taken by a Reuters photographer based in Washington, D.C. But what is critical race theory? Why is it causing such a stir, and how does it impact us here locally? Well, let's start with it's an idea that didn't start in the schools. It started with the law. According to Wikipedia, which is actually a good first place to begin researching any topic, quote, critical race theory originated in the mid-1970s in the writings of several American legal scholars, and it emerged as a movement in the 1980s, reworking theories of critical legal studies with more focus on race. The theory emphasizes how racism and disparate racial outcomes can be the result of complex, changing, and often subtle and social institutional dynamics rather than explicit and intentional prejudices by individuals. Or to put it another way, critical race theory sees racism as systemic and institutional rather than a collection of individual prejudices. Let's take a real-world example to better illustrate this concept. In 2017, in Buena Vista, New Jersey, quote, a 16-year-old African-American wrestler named Andrew Johnson was given an ultimatum by a white referee before a match. Your hair covering doesn't conform to the rule book, so cut your dreadlocks or forfeit. Soon, a viral video of a white female trainer cutting off Johnson's hair transformed the teenager into a new symbol of racial tension in America, end quote, according to the Washington Post. Now, you might say, how is this an example of systemic racism? It seems like this is an example of individual prejudice on the part of the ref. But think about it a little deeper. First, the rule that gives the ref cover to have the kid's haircut right there in front of a gym full of people. The rules prohibit anything but close-cropped hair, which we can assume is meant to avoid hair being pulled by opponents. But it's just as easy to make a rule prohibiting a competitor to use their opponent's hair to gain leverage in a match. Second, this whole incident happened, like I said, in front of a gym full of people, and there are no reports of folks protesting while it was happening, except for the kids' family. In fact, witnesses who were there say the woman who cut the boy's hair looked like she was enjoying herself. If there wasn't a system that keeps people in their places and keeps individuals from speaking out against acts they see as racially motivated, why didn't many of those hundreds of people speak up at the time, in the moment? Who or what stilled their tongues? Third, where was Johnson's backup? From the coach, from the school administrators, from the school board after it happened? While the incident was met with outrage from Americans across the country, the Buena Vista school officials were mute on the subject. This is just one example of overlapping systems, from official rules to unofficial norms to customs and taboos combining to keep individuals in their places. From the wrestler with the dreadlocks to the individuals in the crowd who should have known better but would not speak out for fear of backlash from their community. But what does critical race theory mean here in North Central Washington, and why should we care? Well, we should care because it's being injected into our school board elections right here in the Wenatchee Valley. Candidates who have filed to run for school board positions against qualified incumbents with a history of public service and experience in managing our school districts are being challenged by political newcomers, hoping to use this incendiary issue to provoke emotional responses from local voters and spike turnout through shared outrage. To get a better understanding of how anti-critical race theory, or to speak more plainly, how anti-intellectualism is making its way into our school board elections, I spoke with a local woman named Chris Cameron, who is a retired educator and former president of the Wenatchee Teachers Association Union. In full disclosure, Chris is volunteering as treasurer for Miranda Skalitsky's campaign for school board, and I have pledged my support to Maria Iniguez. So neither Chris nor I are impartial bystanders in this election, and neither should you, especially if you have kids attending Wenatchee schools. Let's take a look at that interview right now. How did you learn about critical race theory?
Well, I retired about a year ago after almost 3 decades in public education, and I'd never heard of CRT or critical race theory or this phrase that I thought was really odd on a school board candidate's campaign page that said, "I support equality, not equity." And I thought that was kind of a strange turn of phrase, and I wasn't really sure what it meant. And then a few days later, a friend who teaches in Walla Walla posted a school board candidate statement that had that exact same phrasing. And we got to talking, and we thought that was odd. And then friends from all over the state said that they had school board candidates with that exact quote in their campaign materials. So we did just a little bit of digging and were able to trace back that language to a Tucker Carlson episode on Fox News, and learned that this was not just a statewide effort, this was a coordinated national effort. And so with a little bit of more digging, we found out that there's an organization that has actually published a how-to manual for how to take over your local school board using CRT and equity as an issue, and that organization is being managed by 3 former Trump staff members whose goal is to keep these divisive social issues in the public eye, to not only take over school boards, but also to keep voters riled up so that they'll participate in the midterm elections. So, you know, for me, the influence of CRT and this whole equity equality argument in a local school board makes me really sad that it's created a lot of toxic animosity and divisiveness, where really we should just be talking about how can we best serve our kids in our district with the resources that we have. How can we work together to get more of those resources to provide even more for our kids? And I have to question someone who wants to be a member of our local school board who would listen to and take advice from a national TV personality who makes money off of keeping people angry and divided, rather than talking to our local school district officials and teachers about what's really going on in our schools. Because I don't think Tucker Carlson gives a hoot about school kids in Wenatchee. He cares about making money. And the more he keeps people agitated, the more people tune in and the more money he makes. So I'd rather have us discuss what's actually going on in our schools instead of politicizing this whole debate, because frankly, CRT, critical race theory, is not there's no national curriculum. It's not taught K-12. Yeah. So it's a red herring. Yeah. It's kind of like a modern revision of the Red Scare of the 50s. You know, yeah. It's like, oh, communism, oh, liberals, and oh, you know, gay marriage, and they're going to take your gun away, and whatever hot button of the time gets people riled up and to the polls, they'll use. Yeah. And to me, CRT is just one more example of that. It's a red herring, and it shouldn't be. It's not taught in Wenatchee schools. There's no school district policy about it. It's a non-starter. It shouldn't be part of the conversation. It's just creating discord and division where none need be.
Yeah, well said. It's interesting that you brought up the Red Scare, because I literally have that in my introduction to this episode. Oh, shoot. At the beginning, I mentioned the Red Scare and the Satanic Panic of the 1980s and early 90s, of the cults and the stealing of the children, and what they were, you know, there's satanic rituals happening, and this whole wave of satanic panic that you might have remembered it at that time. But it's kind of, it's 2.0 is the QAnon, you know,
drinking kids' blood,
yeah, all this stuff,
ring.
exactly. Yeah. You know, it's that repackage of a very old conspiracy theory, and it actually goes back to anti-Semitism in the Middle Ages. Yeah. You know, they're going to take our kids, they're going to drink their blood. All that stuff is very old.
Well, you know, the other thing that is an aspect of how CRT is being used as a wedge issue is how the people who are pushing this out to local activists are lumping everything in there. you know, oh, those lefty socialist Democrats are going to, you know, teach your kids to hate America and bully white kids and be gay.
Yeah.
You know, when really they're trying to channel everything, including COVID angst.
Yeah.
You know, people were very, you know, there was a lot of difference of opinion about how COVID and schools were handled, and they're channeling a lot of that upset and anger and angst into CRT, along with, you know, they're calling it state-mandated sex ed. And, you know, sex ed is really misnamed. Most of sexual education in elementary school in particular is social emotional learning. It's mislabeled sex ed because it's not teaching about sex. It's teaching about how to be a good friend, how to take turns, how to express yourself in a way that, you know, creates community instead of, you know.
Not expressing yourself with your hands, with your words.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
I
I wasn't making a joke. I was making like a point about how you know, it's about teaching kids not to maybe physically touch each other.
Yes.
In anger or if you're.
Or just in affection, you know.
Or, you know, that can be too much, and that's building those at a young age, building those healthy boundaries later sets them up to say no to other things.
Healthy boundaries, how to voice emotions so that you can resolve an issue without punching someone in the face.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That's what it is. And so it's really, I think, so unfortunate that that got lumped in with sex ed, because the word sex flips people out.
It is. It's a trigger word.
Yeah.
And so is critical race theory at this point.
Yeah.
These are loaded phrases that are trotted out to elicit emotional responses from people, because if you get people emotional, they tend to think less logically.
Yeah, yeah. And it is, it's like pellet.
Yes.
The rat test, pellet.
Exactly. Exactly. Let's stomp on this button and try and shut down people's logic center and get them riled up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an organizing tactic. And you know, the irony is that the people who are using CRT as a way to, you know, kind of bludgeon the schools, talk about, oh, this left wing conspiracy, when really that's what this is.
Yeah.
This is funded by deep pocket bazillionaires like the Koch brothers, the Scaife Foundation, the Bradley Foundation. These guys were behind the Tea Party.
Yeah.
You know, that was made to look like a grassroots uprising when really it was top down. And this is the same.
AstroTurf.
It was AstroTurf, yeah.
And now this is all something that Steve Bannon is pushing, as I understand.
Oh.
You know, and he is essentially the propaganda master.
I would bet Alex Jones is too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's disheartening is that it's become so twisted that teaching kids to be racially sensitive means that you hate white people. Mm-hmm. And it's not that. I mean, you know, I take an example of myself. After George Floyd was killed, I've watched every film, read every book, article that I can get my hands on to educate myself, because I thought, what's the fuss about, you know? And I've learned so much about our history. It doesn't make me love my country an ounce less. I'm still really proud of all that, you know, the United States has been able to accomplish and the example that it's tried to set in the world. But I've become really realistic about some aspects of our history that are not so great. So the only way to not repeat those same mistakes in the future is to take an honest look about them in the past. And taking an honest look at our nation's history does not mean that you don't love your country. I mean, do any of us have a perfect spouse or child? There are things about our family members that drive us crazy, but we love them anyway. It's the same. It's the same.
After the break, I'm going to speak with Dusty Mahoney with the YWCA about their Juneteenth celebration in Wenatchee recently, and ask the question, why should important dates like Juneteenth be remembered by all Americans and taught to our children? Stay tuned.
Are you a take charge kind of person? Consider a career as a health unit coordinator. You'll work to keep health facilities running efficiently by coordinating medical providers, patients, and departments. The Charter College Certificate in Health Unit Coordinator program can get you up to speed on basic patient care, health records management, health and safety procedures, and medical billing. And the 10-month online program includes a computer you keep. Get started at chartercollege.edu, where we work to get you to work.
Your search for quality patio furniture with excellent customer service is over. Blue Lagoon is proud to offer only the finest outdoor furniture and accessories from some of the most renowned manufacturers in the industry. Our showroom showcases a large selection of in-stock furniture, fire pits, umbrellas, cushions, and outdoor accessories. Our in-house outdoor decor specialist is available to help you design and custom order the perfect furniture for your unique space.
Hi, I'm Chuck Dronan, Managing Member at Eplodolin Retirement and Assisted Living. It's been a tough year for all of us, but especially for those working and living in senior care facilities. Over the course of these many difficult months, our staff at Eplodolin has been vigilant in adhering to federal and state guidelines to protect and assure the safety of our residents and their caregivers. If you're in need of assisted living for a loved one, give us a call at Eplodolin. We're here for you.
At Wenatchee Powersports, we proudly offer the Polaris product line. Polaris builds the highest quality side-by-side in the industry, with off-road capability that's second to none. The Polaris pre-order program allows customers to purchase the vehicle they want without having to select from limited dealer inventory. The Wenatchee Valley has year-round access to some of the best ORV trails in the Northwest. Start your adventure here at Wenatchee Powersports.
Introducing Alpine Airman. Because every home needs a superhero to eliminate poor indoor air quality, send inefficient operating equipment packing, and cut high energy bills down to size. For heating or cooling and equipment replacement, turn to the experts and the superheroes at Carrier and Alpine Air. We offer the best deals on high-efficiency Carrier products, along with friendly, knowledgeable service and incredible savings to fit your budget.
Welcome back. Now let's take a look at my interview with Dusty Mahoney with the NCWYWCA, which is an organization dedicated to empowering women and combating racism. They were one of a few organizations and individuals who organized a Juneteenth celebration and educational event in Wenatchee recently. And why did your organization partner with others in the region to put on the Juneteenth celebration at Pioneer Park?
So YWCA National, our mission is empowering women, eliminating racism. And so for us, it's important to uplift the voices of those who haven't always been uplifted. And especially in a community like Wenatchee, where there just isn't a particularly large Black community. We felt it was really important to partner with Nash Consulting and with Blessed in the Storm and She Colors Nature to uplift the voices of our Black community and really focus on a celebration. Last summer was really traumatic for our small Black community, just with all of the civil unrest and the George Floyd murders and Breonna Taylor. And we needed a chance to reconnect and really celebrate Black joy.
Why does something, that happened in Galveston, Texas, 150 plus years ago, matter in Washington State, which was never a slave state, or I guess a territory at that time? Why is that history something that is applicable here and now? Right.
So I first learned about Juneteenth when I think I was about 10 or so. My dad is from Kentucky, and he remembers celebrating with his family. And Juneteenth for the Black community isn't just about Galveston, Texas. It's about so much more. It's about celebrating where we've come from. It's about celebrating where we're going. And I think in Wenatchee, we really have to focus not so much on where we've come from, because it is different up in Washington, because we think of ourselves as this fairly liberal state, especially over on the west side. We've got some of the best civil liberties protections in the country. But I think it's also really important for the Black community to know where we're going. And I think that that's a lot of what Juneteenth is really about, is it's about celebrating the past and the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess my only other question would be, why is it important for all Americans, no matter what your race, religion, color, creed might be, why is it important to remember dates like Juneteenth?
I think a lot of folks want us to kind of move past Juneteenth and not need to celebrate it because racism is over. But I think that if we ignore our history, then we're never going to learn from our history. It's important for all Americans to celebrate Juneteenth because it wasn't just a big day for Black America. Obviously, it was a huge day for Black America. I mean, emancipation is a big one. But I think it's important for us to remember our history, the good and the bad, so that we can move forward and learn from it and not repeat our past mistakes. And I think that that's an important lesson for all Americans, regardless of race.
The fact is that Americans who look like me and maybe look like you too have refused to honestly address in both our classrooms and around many kitchen tables for far too long the role that race has played throughout our history. Now, there have been a lot of talk about whether we should be teaching our kids about the painful and often bleak truths about how racial intolerance and white supremacy are woven into the fabric of our history. But as uncomfortable as it is, how do you gloss over the truth that chattel slavery only worked because most white people truly believed they were superior to Black people and therefore could own them? How do you ignore the fact that white supremacy was part and parcel of our westward expansion? Unless white settlers really believed they were superior to Native Americans, how could they justify both morally and legally taking indigenous land and evicting the natives from Florida to right here in Washington state? How can you look at the treatment of the Chinese and other Asian immigrants on the West Coast, many of whom helped build the railroads that really opened up the West? If you have even paid the slightest attention to Pacific Northwest history, you will realize our history is marked with anti-Asian racism, from the curfews they had to endure to the Japanese internment camps of the Second World War. Isn't it interesting that Americans of Italian and German heritage didn't have to board up their businesses and live in camps surrounded by barbed wire during the war? Now, these observations don't mean that Americans and America haven't done great things. It doesn't diminish our achievements, but refusing to acknowledge the reality of our sometimes terrible behavior, from slavery to the conquest of the West, actually tarnishes our national prestige, because refusing to acknowledge those hard truths, especially at this day and age, makes us look weak. Revisionist history makes us look immature and even delusional. We should be teaching our kids history, not nostalgia dressed up as history. When folks across the world see Texas passing a bill to promote, quote, patriotic education and gloss over the history of slavery and racism in that state's history, it's hard to imagine they come away with a positive impression of us. And mandates to roll out patriotic education sounds like something you'd hear about coming from North Korea, not an American state. Aside from what other people in other countries think, what matters more is what the descendants of African slaves and indigenous people think. Refusing to admit that America is a nation built on stolen land on the backs of stolen and enslaved people is a slap in the face not only to the descendants of the natives who were driven from the best real estate from Florida to Alaska, but also to our fellow Americans of African American descent whose not too distant forebears worked the plantations of the South and even rebuilt the White House after it was burned down by British soldiers in the War of 1812. Many argue, and with a lot of solid evidence to back them up, that chattel slavery helped kickstart an American economy that would go on to become a global powerhouse in the years after the Civil War. The merchants and businessmen of New England invested their ships and capital to build the nation, while the slaves our forebears forced into bondage invested their sweat, blood, and tears to cultivate the crops and build the infrastructure of a fledgling nation. It is a system that we all benefit from to this day, but are we personally responsible for the decisions of those forebears? I didn't personally condone chattel slavery, and I'm sure no one watching this program would either. So what responsibility, if any, do we bear? It's something I've thought a lot about, and I think not lying to kids is a good start. But the author Isabel Wilkerson addresses this idea poignantly in her book Cast. In it, she writes, quote, "We are not personally responsible for what people who look like us did centuries ago, but we are responsible for what good or ill we do to people alive with us today. We are each responsible for every decision that hurts or harms another human being. We are responsible for recognizing that what happened in previous generations at the hands of or to people who look like us set the stage for the world we now live in, and that what has gone before us grants us advantages or burdens through no effort or fault of our own, gains or deficits that others who do not look like us often share. We are responsible for our own ignorance, and with time and open-hearted enlightenment, our own wisdom." End quote. Let's not let ignorance and fear infect our minds and drive wedges between us. Let's endeavor to pursue open-hearted enlightenment and wisdom, if not for the benefit of ourselves personally, then for the benefit of our children. Join me next time for more Common Sense.
for joining us today. I know my time is very precious, but I would like to yield some of my time to General Milley because I know that he had some comments that he wanted to make when Representative Gates was talking, as well as Mr. Waltz, about a similar subject of the stand down and race theory. Would you like a minute or so to comment on that? Do you remember what your line of questioning or thought was there?
Sure. First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets. But I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military. And I thank you for the opportunity to make a comment on that.
Flooring is the foundation of decorating. It sets the tone for your home and reflects your lifestyle. At Apple Valley Floors to Go, their goal is to help you make that choice a great experience. You'll find extensive flooring options at their beautiful East Wenatchee showroom. Engineered hardwoods, laminates, vinyl planks, carpeting. Do it yourself or have their professional installation team do the work for you. Family owned and operated in East Wenatchee.
I'm John Divis from Wenatchee Dental Arts, and I like to think myself as a comprehensive dentist. We are an office that treats people comprehensively for their dental problems. We do a lot of general dentistry in a broad sense. We don't send everything out. Things that we have the ability to do in the office, we like to keep in the office and under one roof and keep things as complication-free as possible. You can come to one place and have all their dental needs taken care of.
At D.A. Davidson in Wenatchee, they believe your investment success begins with a personalized plan. A plan that is the roadmap you need to navigate your way to living your best years in retirement. D.A. Davidson can help you create a plan so you can take the time to enjoy the finer things in life. Let the financial advisors at D.A. Davidson help chart your retirement future today.
Hi folks, welcome to Save Mart. How can we help you today?
We're looking for a recliner.
Okay, right this way. Go ahead and move this chair on the other side. You can lift this up.
Great, I want that one. I would like that one.
That's a great choice.
And I want this one as well.
Okay.
And I definitely want this one.
You'll find it at Save Mart. Full service at a low, low price.
I'm Brian Thorpe with Global Car Care, and you're watching NCWLIFE channel.